Sarah makes $68,000 a year. She has a job with benefits, a car that runs, an apartment she can afford, barely. She pays her bills on time mostly. She's not rich, but she's not broke either. By every definition that used to matter, Sarah is middle class. But here's what Sarah's bank account actually looks like. She has $1,200 in savings. Her credit card balance is $7,400 and it's been sitting there for 2 years. Her retirement account has $23,000 in it. She's 38. She hasn't had a real vacation since 2021. And last Tuesday, when her car needed $900 in repairs, she had to choose between fixing it and paying rent on time. Sarah isn't struggling because she's irresponsible. She isn't behind because she made bad decisions. Sarah is struggling because the middle class she was promised no longer exists. And nobody, not the news, not the government, not your financial advisor, is saying that out loud. My name is Nick, and today we're going to talk about the collapse that's already happened, why you probably felt it before you could name it, and what you can actually do about it. Let's start with a number. In 1971, 61% of American adults lived in middle-class households. Today, that number is 50%. That's the first time in modern American history that middle-class households are no longer the majority. The Pew Research Center confirmed it. Half the country, gone. But here's what makes this collapse so dangerous. It didn't happen like a car crash. It happened like a slow leak in a tire. You drove on it for years, wondering why the ride felt slightly off, before you finally pulled over and realized you'd been running on almost nothing for a long time. The middle class didn't collapse in 2008. It didn't collapse during COVID. Those events accelerated something that started quietly in the 1980s and has been running on autopilot ever since. Here's what that looks like in real numbers. In 1985, a median income American household spent about 29% of their income on housing. Today, that number is 40% or higher in most major cities. That's not a lifestyle upgrade. That's the same roof costing 40% more of your paycheck than it did for your parents. In 1980, a year of college at a public university cost about $3,500 adjusted for inflation. Today, it's over $26,000. Same degree, same campus, 8 times the price. In 1975, a single income could support a family of 4 in the middle class. Today, 2 incomes barely do the same job. The floor of the middle class didn't just rise, it caught fire. Here's the lie that made all of this invisible for so long. You were told that if you worked hard, got a degree, bought a house, and saved a little every month, you'd be fine. That was the contract. That was the deal. And the infuriating part? Your parents followed that contract and it worked for them. So when it stopped working for you, the obvious conclusion everyone jumped to was, you must be doing something wrong. You're spending too much on coffee. You're not budgeting correctly. You're making poor financial decisions. But here's what they never told you. The contract didn't fail because you broke it. The contract failed because the other side stopped honoring it. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Between 1979 and 2020, American worker productivity grew by 61.8%. That means the average American worker is producing 62% more value than they were 40 years ago. Wages over that same period? Up 17.5% after inflation. Read that again. Workers created 62% more value. They got paid 17.5% more for it. The other 44%? It went somewhere. It just didn't go to Sarah. This is not an accident. This is not laziness. This is not avocado toast. This is a 40-year transfer of wealth from working people to the top of the income ladder, happening so gradually that by the time you noticed something felt wrong, it had already been wrong for decades. And here's the part that should genuinely make you angry. The people at the top of that ladder, the ones collecting the 44% that didn't go to workers, they spend an enormous amount of energy making sure the conversation stays focused on your spending habits instead of their income gains. Because as long as you're debating whether to cut Netflix, you're not asking the harder questions. So let's talk about what the collapse actually looks like inside a real household. Because this isn't abstract. This is happening in 4 very specific places simultaneously. And that simultaneity, all 4 hitting at once, is what makes this different from anything the middle class has faced before. Wall 1. Housing. The median home price in America right now is $420,000. The 30-year mortgage rate is sitting above 6.5%. That means a standard mortgage payment with taxes and insurance on a median-priced home is roughly $3,200 a month. The median household income in America is about $80,000 a year, which is $6,667 a month before taxes. After taxes, you're looking at maybe $5,000 take home. So your housing alone is consuming 64% of your after-tax income. The old rule was 28%. We are not in the old rule anymore. In 1990, the median home cost 3.5 times the median household income. Today it costs 6.5 times. Same country, same idea of home ownership, twice the financial weight. Wall 2. Healthcare. The average employer-sponsored family health insurance plan now costs over $24,000 a year in total premiums. Your employer pays most of it, but don't confuse that with free. That $24,000 is part of your total compensation that never reaches your paycheck. It's money you earned that you never see. And that's before deductibles, co-pays, and the $400 bill you get 6 weeks after a routine checkup for reasons nobody can fully explain. Wall 3. Childcare. The average cost of full-time childcare in the United States is now $1,230 a month per child. In major cities, it's over $2,000. For 2 kids, you're looking at $25,000 to $50,000 a year, after-tax dollars, just to go to work. For millions of American families, the second income doesn't pay for a better life. It pays for childcare so the second person can keep working. The math barely breaks even. And yet the alternative, one parent leaving the workforce, sets retirement savings back by a decade. Wall 4. Debt. Total American consumer debt just crossed $18 trillion. The average household carries $103,000 in total debt. Credit card interest rates are now averaging 21.5%, the highest in the history of the Federal Reserve tracking that number. Student loan debt sits at $1.77 trillion, carried by 43 million Americans. And here is the truly absurd part. For the median American household, the monthly minimum payments on all their debt combined now consume more of their budget than food. They are paying more to service yesterday's spending than they are spending to eat today. 4 walls, closing in from every direction at the same time. On one paycheck, or 2 paychecks that feel like one. This is not a budgeting problem. This is a structural problem. Quick pause, because I know what some of you are thinking right now. Okay, Nick, I get it. Everything is terrible. But what do I actually do about this? I'm going to get there in a few minutes, and I promise it's more practical than cut your subscriptions. But first, there's one more piece of this collapse that almost nobody is talking about. And it's the piece that explains why so many middle-class people feel ashamed of where they are when they have absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. Here's something strange about this collapse. It's happening everywhere. It's happening to tens of millions of people simultaneously. And yet most people experiencing it think they're experiencing it alone. Why? Because the collapse is invisible from the outside. Sarah still drives to work. She still posts photos from birthday dinners. She still smiles when someone asks how things are going. Because the alternative, admitting that $900 in car repairs nearly broke her, feels like failure in a country that treats financial struggle as a personal character flaw. And this silence is the most destructive part of the whole thing. Because when you think you're the only one, you don't get angry at the system. You get angry at yourself. You cut more corners. You work more hours. You take out one more credit card to cover the gap. And you quietly absorb the message that if you were just a little smarter, a little more disciplined, a little better, you'd be fine. But the data doesn't lie. 63% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck right now. That's not a fringe statistic. That's not just the poor. That's your neighbor who drives the new SUV. That's your coworker who just got promoted. That's the family at church who seems to have it all together. The middle class isn't failing quietly in the margins, it's failing loudly in the majority. We've just all agreed, silently, not to talk about it. The financial industry doesn't want you to talk about it because your anxiety is their product. The political class doesn't want you to talk about it because your desperation is their leverage. And the social pressure around money means most people would rather go deeper into debt than admit to their friends they're struggling. So, you stay quiet. You keep performing. And the collapse continues. One silent household at a time. All right, let's talk about what actually moves the needle. Because this video isn't ending on everything is broken, good luck. I want to be clear about something first. I'm not going to tell you that hustling harder solves a structural problem. It doesn't. One person working more hours cannot outrun a 40-year wage gap. That's not defeatism, that's math. But here's what you can control inside a broken system. And these aren't tips. These are strategic moves that work specifically because the system is broken the way it is. Move 1. Stop optimizing your income. Start optimizing your gap. The middle class obsesses over earning more. Wealthy people obsess over the gap between what they earn and what they spend. Even a $500 monthly gap, invested consistently in a low-cost index fund, becomes $340,000 over 25 years at historical market returns. The gap is the engine. Everything else is noise. Move 2. Your housing decision is your most important financial decision. Not your retirement account, not your investment portfolio. Housing. Because it's the single largest expense and the single largest asset for most middle-class households. Overpaying for housing by $400 a month doesn't cost you $400 a month. At 7% investment returns compounded over 20 years, it costs you $196,000. Every housing decision is an investment decision. Treat it like one. Move 3. Treat debt like the emergency it is. At 21% interest, a $7,000 credit card balance costs you $1,470 a year just to exist. That's not a payment plan. That's a subscription to being poor. The avalanche method, paying minimums on everything and throwing every extra dollar at your highest interest debt first, is mathematically the fastest exit. Not the most emotionally satisfying. The fastest. Move 4. Build the smallest possible moat. You don't need 6 months of expenses saved to start feeling different. Research shows that $2,000 in an untouchable emergency fund measurably reduces financial anxiety and improves decision-making. $2,000. That's the first wall between you and the next $900 car repair turning into a crisis. Start there. Not with a retirement account, not with investing. The moat first. Move 5. Stop competing with a lifestyle that's borrowed. The neighbor with the new truck is probably financing it at 8% interest over 72 months. The coworker with the luxury vacation probably put it on a card they're still paying off. The performance of middle-class prosperity is being funded by debt. And the audience it's performed for is doing the same performance right back. When you stop watching the show, you stop paying for a ticket you can't afford. Let's go back to Sarah. Sarah makes $68,000 a year. She has $1,200 in savings and $7,400 in credit card debt, And last Tuesday, a $900 car repair nearly broke her. But here's what else is true about Sarah. She's not behind because she's weak. She's behind because she's been running a race with a 40-pound weight on her back that wasn't there for the generation ahead of her. Higher housing costs, higher education costs, stagnant wages, compounding debt, and a social contract that stopped being honored before she was old enough to read it. The collapse of the middle class is not a collection of individual failures. It's a single systemic failure wearing 50 million different faces. And the first step out of it, the very first step, is refusing to be ashamed of something that was never your fault to begin with. Because you cannot fix a problem you've been convinced is a personal flaw. The system is broken. That's real. But you still have agency inside a broken system. You still have a gap you can widen, a moat you can build, a debt you can avalanche, a housing decision you can make deliberately instead of desperately. The middle class isn't dead. It's just been told to be quiet about what's happening to it. You don't have to be quiet anymore. If this video helped you see your situation differently, share it with someone who needs to hear it, because I promise you they're sitting in the same silence Sarah is. And hit subscribe if you want to keep seeing the real math behind the money decisions that actually matter. I'll see you in the next one.